What if the coldest place on Earth isn't hiding ice, but a truth so old, so buried, and so disturbing that if it were fully uncovered, it could rewrite everything we think we know about our planet's past? What if the most lifeless place on Earth is actually the place hiding the biggest truth? That question has stayed with me for a long time, because Antarctica does not feel like an ordinary continent. It feels sealed off. It feels watched. It feels like one of the last places on this planet that still refuses to fully explain itself. No real cities, no permanent civilian population, no roads stretching across normal human life. Just ice, silence, brutal wind, and a landscape so hostile that it almost seems designed to keep people out. And yet, somehow, the more impossible it looks, the more the world seems drawn to it. That is what unsettles me. Because if Antarctica were truly nothing more than a frozen wasteland, then why has it attracted so much global attention for so many decades? Why do powerful nations continue pouring money, resources, and political energy into a place where almost nobody can live? Why does a continent that appears empty feel so important? The deeper I looked, the harder it became to accept the simple version of the story. Antarctica is supposed to be the end of the Earth, a dead white silence at the bottom of the map. But the truth is, it does not feel dead at all. It feels hidden. Welcome to Hidden Truth Channel. What draws me to Antarctica is not one theory, not one rumor, not one strange photo seen from space. It is the pattern. Again and again, this continent seems to produce the same disturbing feeling that something about it does not fit. Officially, it is a place of science, research stations, and environmental monitoring. But surrounding that official image is something colder, deeper, and much harder to shake. Strange formations, ancient clues, buried worlds under miles of ice, questions that never seem to go away. And maybe that is why Antarctica grips the imagination so powerfully. Because it is one of the few places left on Earth where science and mystery still stand side by side. A place where every new discovery seems to open another locked door instead of closing one. If mysteries like this pull you in too, subscribe to the channel and support Hidden Truth Channel so we can keep uncovering more stories that challenge what we think we know. Because Antarctica may look like the emptiest place on Earth, but I believe it may be one of the fullest, full of secrets. And once I stopped looking at Antarctica as a blank white continent, I started noticing something even harder to ignore. The shapes. One of the discoveries that stayed with me the most was a satellite image that sparked serious discussion in 2012. Somewhere in East Antarctica, far from the familiar world of research stations and mapped human activity, an unusual oval formation appeared in the ice. Reports described it as stretching roughly 120 meters, and what made it so disturbing was not simply its size, but its geometry. It looked ring-like, structured, balanced in a way that felt almost intentional. Not dramatic in the Hollywood sense, but unsettling in a quieter way. The kind of unsettling that begins when your eyes recognize a pattern before your mind has decided what it is seeing. Naturally, the first explanations were scientific. Strong katabatic winds, among the fiercest on Earth, can rush down from Antarctica's high interior and sculpt the snow into elongated ridges and strange formations. Over time, ice pressure, wind erosion, and subtle geological forces can create features that look bizarre from above. I understand that, and I am not dismissing it. But sometimes a technical explanation does not erase the deeper impressions something leaves on you. Sometimes a place can be explained and still remain eerie. That is exactly how I feel when I look at the so-called Antarctic pyramids. I know what geologists say. They say these are mountain peaks shaped by freeze-thaw cycles, erosion, and glacial cutting over immense periods of time. And maybe that is true. Maybe these sharp faces and triangular silhouettes are nothing more than nature doing what nature has always done. But what lingers in my mind is how often Antarctica produces forms that look almost too clean, too composed, too visually deliberate. Not just one strange mountain, but multiple formations that seem to trigger the same reaction in anyone who sees them. Why does that look designed? That question matters more than any single theory. Because this is where Antarctica becomes psychologically powerful. It does not need to prove anything outright. It only needs to create doubt. It only needs to place one image in front of you that does not behave the way your mind expects a random landscape to behave. And once that happens, every new anomaly begins to carry more weight. The eye starts searching for intention, the imagination starts connecting shapes, and the continent, almost without trying, begins to feel less like wilderness and more like a place holding its posture in silence. The same thing happened when people saw images of an unusually straight-edged iceberg, almost geometric in form, with lines so clean they barely looked natural at first glance. Again, there were scientific explanations. Again, those explanations may be correct, but Antarctica keeps creating this same emotional effect. It gives us something that can be explained on paper, yet still feels visually wrong in the bones. And I think that is what makes these formations so haunting. Not that they prove an ancient civilization or some hidden structure beneath the ice, but that they keep forcing the same uncomfortable thought into the mind. What if this continent is not only stranger than we imagine, but far more carefully hidden than it appears? But the deeper I went, the more I realized the strangest thing about Antarctica is not what looks unnatural there, but what was once undeniably alive. That, to me, is where this story becomes much more powerful. Because unusual shapes can trigger curiosity, even suspicion, but evidence of a completely different past changes the emotional weight of everything. It forces you to stop seeing Antarctica as a permanent world of deathly cold and start seeing it as a place with memory, a place that used to be something else entirely. One discovery that keeps returning to my mind came from King George Island, where researchers uncovered naturally mummified penguins preserved beneath layers of snow and ice. There is something deeply haunting about that image. Not just dead animals frozen in time, but silent witnesses from an older Antarctica, their bodies kept intact by the very climate that eventually erased the world they once lived in. What makes this even more striking is that these were not random modern remains. The surrounding evidence, including traces of ancient nesting activity, pointed to ecosystems that once functioned differently from the frozen margins we imagine today. And when scientists analyzed what those penguins had eaten, the picture became even more fascinating. Their diet suggested access to mussels, small fish, and marine vegetation, signs of coastal conditions that were more biologically productive, and in some areas, far more favorable to life than the Antarctica we know now. I cannot help pausing there, because that single fact changes the emotional landscape of the continent. It means this was not always a world of relentless white emptiness. It was once a place where life could root itself, feed itself, and endure. The same feeling deepens when you look at the McMurdo Dry Valleys. Even the name sounds strange, almost impossible in the context of Antarctica. Yet this region, stripped by fierce winds and shaped by unusual soil chemistry, reveals something few people instinctively associate with the southern polar world: exposed ground, barren terrain, and the fossilized remains of ancient plants. Paleontologists found fragments of vegetation and even traces of trees dating back tens of millions of years. Trees, in Antarctica. That idea alone is enough to shake the imagination loose from everything it assumed. And what moves me most is not just that these discoveries prove the climate was once milder. It is that they hint at a lost continuity, an older Antarctica that has been buried, silenced, and locked beneath the ice like a chapter torn out of Earth's own biography. Even now, life persists there in ways that feel almost defiant. Antarctic fungi survive temperatures that would destroy most organisms, and some seem to function better in the cold than in warmth, as if they belong to a version of life adapted to conditions that seem almost unlivable to us. Then there is the phenomenon known as singing ice, where shifting temperatures cause the frozen surface to vibrate and release eerie sounds across the landscape. Scientists can study it, measure it, explain it. But when I think about it, I do not hear just physics. I hear a continent reminding us that it is not dead, only buried. And once you begin to feel Antarctica that way, as a place preserving the remains of a warmer, richer, more living past, the next question becomes almost impossible to resist. If so much life once existed at the edge of this frozen world, what else may still be waiting beneath it? And once I accepted that Antarctica had once been a radically different world, I found myself pulled toward an even more unsettling possibility. Maybe the ice is not only preserving ancient life, but ancient knowledge, ancient environments, and perhaps traces of a past we still do not know how to read. That is why the Piri Reis map keeps haunting this conversation. Drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral, it has remained one of those documents that refuses to sit quietly inside history. Some researchers have argued that parts of it appear to show a coastline resembling Antarctica without the ice that now seals it away. I know how controversial that claim is. I know many historians and cartographers reject that interpretation and offer more conventional explanations. But what fascinates me is not the certainty of the claim. It is the durability of the discomfort. Because if even a fragment of that idea were true, then it would suggest that someone, somewhere, possessed geographic knowledge that should not have existed in the form we understand history today. And that is the kind of question Antarctica seems to breed. Not clean answers, but persistent disturbances. Then there is Lake Vostok. Hidden beneath nearly 2.5 miles of ice, one of the most isolated bodies of water on Earth. Every time I think about it, I feel the scale of this continent change in my mind. Antarctica stops being a frozen surface and starts feeling layered, almost architectural, as if beneath the visible world there are sealed chambers of time. Lake Vostok may have been cut off from the outside for millions of years. That means beneath all that crushing ice could exist an ecosystem that evolved in darkness, untouched by weather, untouched by sunlight, untouched by the ordinary biological traffic of the modern world. To me, that idea is both beautiful and terrifying. Beautiful because it speaks to the endurance of life. Terrifying because it reminds us how little we know about what can survive when a world is closed and forgotten long enough. And as if hidden water were not enough, Antarctica also conceals scars large enough to reshape the imagination. In Wilkes Land, researchers identified a massive buried depression, so vast that some believe it may be the remains of an ancient impact crater hundreds of kilometers across. If that interpretation is correct, then Antarctica may be hiding evidence of a collision powerful enough to alter the climate of the planet itself. But the truth remains sealed under miles of ice, unreachable in any simple sense, suspended between calculation and mystery. The same feeling follows the Gamburtsev Mountains, an entire mountain range entombed beneath East Antarctica. We cannot stand there and look at them directly. We know them through instruments, through echoes, through radar, through the indirect language of science. Yet that very remoteness gives them a strange emotional force. Reports of heat anomalies, unusual ice movement, and suggestions of vast hidden voids beneath the surface make the region feel less like a stable geological zone and more like a locked interior space, something withheld. This is the point where stories about lost civilizations begin to gather, not because they are proven, but because Antarctica creates the perfect conditions for them to grow. The Atlantis hypothesis is the clearest example. For generations, people searched for Plato's vanished world in warm seas and ancient coastlines, but Antarctica introduces a darker possibility. What if the remains of some forgotten chapter of civilization were not drowned in open water, but buried beneath a continent transformed beyond recognition? I do not say that to claim Atlantis was there. I say it because Antarctica has a way of making even impossible ideas feel emotionally plausible. And perhaps that is the deeper truth of this continent. It is not merely that it hides things. It is that everything hidden there seems to belong to a scale beyond ordinary human thinking. Buried lakes, buried mountains, buried impact scars, buried climate histories, perhaps even buried memories of worlds we no longer recognize. The more I sit with that, the more Antarctica stops feeling like the far edge of the map and starts feeling like a vault containing pieces of Earth's lost past, still locked beneath the ice, waiting for the moment when one discovery forces us to rethink everything. And maybe that is why what happens in Antarctica now feels so important, because this is no longer only a story about what has been hidden there, but about what may soon begin to emerge. What unsettles me most is that the continent is changing before our eyes. For a long time, Antarctica seemed almost untouchable in the human imagination, too vast, too cold, too ancient to change in any meaningful way within a single lifetime. But that illusion is fading. The ice is shifting. In some regions, it is thinning and retreating faster than many once expected. Scientists continue debating the exact balance of causes: warmer ocean currents, changing atmospheric patterns, unstable ice shelves, geothermal heat rising from below. And to me, that uncertainty makes the moment feel even more serious, not less. Because it suggests Antarctica is not a frozen monument. It is an active system, moving, responding, and in some places perhaps slowly opening. And that possibility changes the emotional meaning of everything we have explored. Because melting ice is not only a climate issue here, it may also become a historical unveiling, a geological unveiling, even perhaps a biological one. As the ice shifts, it may expose landscapes that no modern human has ever seen, reveal formations that once seemed impossible to verify, uncover deeper evidence of ancient ecosystems, and bring us closer to answers that have remained sealed away for ages. The same continent that has hidden buried lakes, erased warmer worlds, and inspired theories of forgotten civilizations may now be entering a phase where fragments of its silence begin to break. Even the old legends surrounding Antarctica seem to gain strength from that sense of sealed secrecy. The story of Nazi Base 211 is one example. Official history confirms a German expedition reached Antarctica in 1939 and claimed part of the region known as New Swabia. Beyond that, myth rushed in to fill the void. Hidden tunnels, underground refuges, lost archives, technologies carried into the ice. I do not accept those stories as fact, but I understand why they endure. Antarctica has always felt like the kind of place where unanswered questions harden into legend. The deeper I think about this continent, the less it feels like the end of the world and the more it feels like the edge of a revelation. Not because every theory is true, but because even the confirmed reality is astonishing enough. A land that preserves the remains of vanished climates, concealed worlds, and unresolved anomalies is not empty. It is waiting, and I think that is the most shocking truth of all. Antarctica may not simply be hiding the past. It may be holding the first clues to a discovery that could change how we understand Earth itself. When I step back from everything Antarctica seems to represent, the strangest part is not any single mystery. Not the pyramids, not the hidden lakes, not the ancient maps, and not even the buried signs of a warmer world. The strangest part is how quickly this continent humbles us. It reminds us that even in an age of satellites, data, and constant information, there are still places on Earth that remain larger than our certainty. Antarctica stands like a frozen contradiction. It looks empty, yet it holds layers of history. It seems silent, yet it speaks through ice, fossils, and anomalies. It appears dead, yet it preserves evidence of life, change, and motion across unimaginable stretches of time. And maybe that is why it affects people so deeply. Antarctica forces us to confront a truth most of us try to avoid in everyday life. We do not know as much as we think we do. There are still hidden chapters in the story of this planet, and there may also be hidden chapters in our own lives, truths we ignore because they are buried beneath routine, comfort, and assumption. The deeper lesson, I think, is this. Real understanding begins when arrogance ends. The moment we stop assuming that everything important has already been discovered, we become capable of seeing the world with wonder again. In our lives today, that means staying curious, questioning easy answers, being patient with uncertainty, and respecting how much remains unseen beneath the surface of people, history, and even ourselves. Not every mystery is meant to be feared. Some are meant to wake us up. Some are meant to remind us to look deeper, think harder, and live with more humility. Antarctica is not just a distant continent of ice. It is a mirror, showing us that the world is still full of secrets, and that maybe the most meaningful life we can live is one that never stops searching for truth. So here is a simple question for you. Do you believe Antarctica is hiding only natural secrets, or something far more extraordinary? Please share your opinion in the comments so everyone can read different perspectives and learn from each other. And if you enjoy exploring mysteries like this, subscribe to the channel and support us so we can keep creating even more powerful stories in the next videos.